On Twitter over the weekend, somebody posted an interesting prompt for discussion. The question posed is this: what might you ask on a first date to determine their IQ? Now, lots of people offered answers to this question. Many of the answers were predictably horrible, likely because they were given by people who have no record of success in the dating world. And just to remind you, a record of success in dating does not mean that you've dated a lot of people. That is, in fact, a record of failure. Okay, if you've dated a lot of people, you're bad at dating. You're bad at this. No one should listen to you. If you are, say, in your late 20s or early 30s, and you've been on hundreds of dates with many dozens of different people, that doesn't mean that you're good at dating. It means that you are apparently not good at it. In a similar way, if a college senior is now heading into his 7th year of college, it doesn't mean that he's really good at college. We shouldn't say, this guy's great at college. He's been doing it forever. It means precisely the opposite. So dating, like college, should move from one step to the next until you graduate. The people qualified to give dating advice, the only people qualified to give it, are those who have graduated. And graduation, in this case, of course, is marriage. The whole point of dating is to graduate to marriage. If someone has not yet graduated, then we don't know whether they know how to graduate because they haven't done it. And if they don't know how to do the thing that dating is actually for, they're certainly not equipped to give dating advice. So that might explain why the dating advice offered on social media and in response to questions like this is so terrible so often. But as a dating graduate myself, I decided to take a stab at the question. It is a good question, I will say. You should be looking to date someone who is basically intelligent. The only caveat is that you actually shouldn't need to ask any particular question to figure this out. If you are yourself intelligent, then you should be able to assess whether the other person is intelligent just from talking to them for 10 minutes. If your dumb radar, your dumb-dar, let's call it, is not finely tuned enough to sniff out a dummy in 10 minutes or less, well, I've got bad news for you. I don't think I need to spell it out. Actually, I do need to spell it out. You're dumb. That's what I'm saying. So with that said, there are questions you can ask that will help clarify things pretty quickly. So here's what I advise, with the stipulation that this particular advice only applies to women dating men. So I've given men plenty of dating advice over the years. So this one's for the ladies. If you want to figure out what kind of man you're with intellectually, ask him this question. What historical periods are you interested in? This is a very serious suggestion to any single women. The next time you're on a date, ask that question. It won't tell you everything you need to know about the guy, but it will tell you a lot, and it may tell you enough. Because an intelligent man with an inquisitive mind will not only have an answer, but will be excited that you asked. Like, you want a man who not only answers it, but is like, oh, thank God, I didn't think you'd be asking me that question on a first date. Thank God. Let's talk about this. His eyes will light up that you brought this up. And he might tell you that he's interested in the American Revolution or the Civil War or ancient Egypt or the early church or the late Roman Empire or the Napoleonic Wars or the Crusades. Or you might be really lucky and find yourself on a date with a guy who has a very specific and slightly more obscure historical interest. Maybe he tells you that he's reading a book right now about the history of Mongolia or the Amazon or 19th century polar exploration or any of 1,000 other possible topics. If he's a smart, interesting guy who likes to read and loves to learn, he can not only rattle off facts about this area of interest, but even more importantly, he can tell you why he's interested in it. And you can learn a lot about him. But by not just what he likes to read about and what historical periods he finds fascinating, but when he tells you what he likes about it, like why does this resonate with him, you can learn more from that than you can from 2 hours of mindless small talk. Now, as the woman, this not only shows you that he's an intelligent guy, but it also provides you an opportunity to make yourself appealing to him. Because a man is not looking for a woman who shares his interests. Okay, just so you know. The man's like, he's not looking for you to like all the same stuff that he likes. If he likes to hunt and to read books about World War II, he doesn't need a woman who also likes to hunt and read books about World War II. In fact, he'd probably be kind of weirded out by that. He's looking for a woman, after all, not another dude. But he does want a woman who is interested in the fact that he is interested in those things. So he wants a woman who encourages him in his interests and respects his interests and is even a little bit impressed by them. So for instance, my wife does not share my quite rabid interest in fishing. And I've seen her maybe pick up a fishing rod 3 times since we married. while I have picked one up, 3 million times. But when I come home from fishing and I report that I just caught the biggest fish ever, she will eagerly ask to see a picture. And when I show her the picture, she'll act legitimately impressed. Now, she may be pretending or hamming it up a bit, just, for all I know. But I appreciate the effort. It's very feminine and affectionate for a woman to make her man feel special and accomplished in those moments. A woman who rolls her eyes and makes it clear that she doesn't give a crap at all is a buzzkill and a turnoff. So she doesn't have to care, but she should care that he cares. And that's your opportunity to signal to the man that you're the kind of woman who cares that he cares about something. So this question is a win-win on multiple levels. Now, on the flip side, if a man is asked what historical periods interest him and he cannot answer the question, or even scoffs at it, or offers up some generic historical subject but then can't explain why he finds it interesting or speak at any length about it, that's a good sign that he's a boring midwit with a shallow, incurious mind. Now, I'm not saying that your date has to be a PhD level expert in history, especially because PhDs don't mean anything anymore, as we talked about in the opening. I'm not saying that he needs to have a vast knowledge of the entire scope of world history. The point is simply that a smart, inquisitive man will at least have a couple of historical subjects that he finds interesting and he enjoys learning about. He doesn't have to be an expert in them. He just likes them. He's interested in them, and he likes to read about them. He likes to learn about them. Now, the chances are very substantial that a man who has no interest in history and no knowledge of it at all is pretty stupid. The overlap between stupid and historically illiterate among men is extremely high. Now, it's not that being historically illiterate is the same thing as being stupid. It's that historical illiteracy is one of the most glaringly obvious signs pointing to stupidity. Just like we might say that wearing a size 46 in pants isn't the same thing as being morbidly obese. It's technically possible that someone who could have a 46 waist and not be obese, maybe they're 7.5 feet tall and 46 is actually slim for their height. It's possible. But in the vast majority of cases, a guy walking around in quadruple XL pants is extremely fat. Just as in the majority of cases, a guy who's never voluntarily read a book about history in his life is a dumbass. Now, the great thing about my tweet on this subject is that it proved itself, because the replies quickly filled with dumb guys who aren't interested in history trying to explain why not being interested in history doesn't make them dumb. But their explanations were all very dumb because they're dumb. There were many comments claiming that history is boring and unimportant and only nerds care about it. I was informed over and over again that it's perfectly valid for a man to have little interest in any historical subject. And that's true. It is valid to be dumb in a legal sense. It's valid. You're allowed to be dumb. You can even vote and be dumb, unfortunately. But that doesn't change the fact that it is dumb to have no interest in history. That's a legally valid position, but it's not an intellectually valid one. And it's the worst kind of dumb because it's arrogant. It's a dumb arrogance. Like, you don't even have the decency to be humble in your dumbness. Instead, you declare that nothing matters if it occurred before you were born. You're not interested in anything that happened to occur before you entered the scene. And because you've turned up your dumb little nose at everything that occurred in the world prior to the moment of your birth, you have no sense of perspective. You don't even understand the things that are happening in the world today because you don't know anything about what precipitated those things. You cannot have any insight into the state of things today if you don't know anything about how things were yesterday. You cannot understand people. You can't understand yourself if you don't know history. Like, living your life today without ever studying history, it's like picking up a book and starting it somewhere in the middle without any concern for what happened in the 20 chapters that you skipped. Now, I realize this analogy may fly over the heads of dummies who don't read in the first place, but the point stands. And besides all that, history is full of stories that are just plain fascinating. How does this not interest you? You're missing out on so many amazing adventures. For example, I just finished a book called River of Darkness about the Spanish conquistador Francisco de Orellana, who in 1541 traveled over the Andes Mountains and into the Amazon and he got into the Amazon, and then they needed a ship. So they set up a manufacturing facility, basically. They built a ship from scratch. They had to manufacture the nails first to build the ship, right down to they didn't have nails, right? They're in the jungle. There's no metal. So they had to make the nails and then cut down all the trees and make the ship. And then he sailed the entire length of the Amazon River, more than 4,000 miles, before making it to the Atlantic Ocean and sailing up to Venezuela. Nobody had ever done that before. The Amazon was completely unexplored and unknown. Many men died along the way. They battled hostile Indian tribes and wild animals and disease and starvation and exposure. How could any man hear a story like that and say, who cares? Not interested. Boring. No thanks. You have to have the intellectual depth of a puddle of piss on the bathroom floor if that's your reaction. No offense. Like, you have to be very stupid and very boring. Not the kind of man any woman should want to date. And that is why those historically illiterate men are today canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.